Welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Annie Dunbar. She is the Senior Social Media Manager at ESPN. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to share your story. Annie has obviously a dream job for a lot of people right now working at ESPN, but it did not come to her easily. She worked really hard to get where she is now. So I'm really excited to jump through your journey and how you've overcome rejection to be able to be where you are today. But before we jump into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course. Yeah. So I'm Annie. I was born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, and attended the University of Kentucky, where I studied journalism during my time there. My last semester of college, I had an internship at ESPN in Bristol. So moved up to Connecticut for my last spring semester and worked on the social media team. From there, it took me a little bit to kind of go through the job hunting aspect of finding your career, and eventually got hired on full time in the fall, and have been now with ESPN for almost 8 years. And right now, yeah, it's been a long time now. And I work day to day on our content strategy for all of our different platforms across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, across 22 different brand accounts, including ESPN, Sports Center, College Game Day, college football, NBA, NFL, you name it, we work on it. So it's been a really fun opportunity to kind of work at what has been my dream job since I was in elementary school.
That sounds amazing. I'm so excited to jump into today, but I want to so many girls that come and talk to me always say, or not always, but a good amount, want to work in sports marketing. And most don't end up in sports marketing just because it's so competitive. You mentioned, I was going to ask you if you've always wanted to work in sports marketing, but you mentioned it's been your dream since you were a kid. Before we get into kind of your whole job search process, was there anything you did earlier in your career, like in college, or anything you did that you think helped you stand out when you were even just starting to look for internships in the sports marketing industry? Because even those are highly, highly competitive.
Yes. So for me, initially, I really wanted to be a sideline reporter. I grew up watching like Erin Andrews on College Game Day, thinking I was going to be a sideline reporter. And when I was in journalism school, we had took a broadcast class where we had to do like a live weather stand up outside, and it was immediately a no. It was like, this is not for me. So for me, I was like, let me figure out what other aspects of sports I can work in. So when you think about it, there's endless options between PR, social media, marketing, production, programming, all sorts of different aspects of working in sports. So for me, I went through multiple different internships. I would take whatever came along. I did a radio internship. I was the football beat reporter for the Kentucky Colonel, which is our student newspaper at the University of Kentucky, and just kind of dabbled in every different aspects that I could. And I think that made me stand out because I could really figure out what I actually wanted to do. So I did an internship with Coach Calipari's website, coachcal.com, when I was a junior in college. And that was kind of like an aha moment for me because I got to work in the social media space for the first time. And that was back in like 2013, 2014, when it looked a lot different than it does right now. But for me, I got to create graphics, edit videos, write copy, still interview players. And it just combined everything I loved into one thing. And from there, it was like, okay, I know exactly what I'm looking for now. And that's when I started applying for ESPN internships. And I got rejected the first 2 times I applied. And then the third time rolled around and I finally got what I wanted, and kind of just went from there.
Was there anything you did, because you said you got rejected twice, was there anything significant that you changed as an applicant, or do you think it was just you being persistent?
I talked with the hiring manager and kept in touch with him. And I was like, please give me feedback. I will take all of it and apply it tomorrow and every day from here on out. So I think that was a big thing for me. He was like, you need to have more experience in video editing. So at that point, that's when I taught myself Premiere on YouTube. And one thing they really were looking for was someone who had Photoshop skills, which I didn't have at the time. And that was also something I taught myself on YouTube. So I think every time I talked to him, it was like, okay, I've worked on this. This is what I can do now. What else do you think I can add? And so he and I kept in contact about like once a month, and I would check in with him. And so he could see after, the third time around, I was committed. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to get this internship. So I really just kind of took everything he told me and applied it from that point on.
That's incredible. I think that doing what you did and staying in touch with the hiring manager and actually welcoming that feedback, because sometimes it's not always easy to hear the things that we're doing wrong, but I think it's so important to always ask that when you get rejected, is to say like, hey, like, why did you reject me? So you can maybe learn something that you didn't know was wrong with your application. Were there any other skills that he mentioned or that you think are essential in the sports marketing industry for either college students or recent grads who are looking like, okay, those are two actionable things you said that maybe they can do. They can go get more video editing skills. They can learn Photoshop. Is there anything else that you think is essential for this industry?
I think, especially in the social media space, you have so many resources yourself. You can download the apps, you can study algorithms, you can read news reports, watch YouTube videos on how to create the best TikToks. There's so many resources just readily available to you on the internet. So when we look at interns to hire, we're looking at who understands the social media space and who has hard skills like Photoshop experience, video editing experience, and whatnot there. So I think the internet is a great place when you look at different things that you can learn. You can Google whatever you're trying to discover and teach yourself a lot of things. And I think you have to be really proactive in that and kind of recognize, hey, maybe my Photoshop skills need some help. How can I, take it to the next level? And you can learn all of those things on the internet, which is great.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we think it's a lot harder than that. And maybe that like, or the answer is simpler than we might think at first. Sure. But that, yeah, you can go on and you can teach yourself a lot of those skills and then do what you did, which is be very, very persistent and really show them like, I'm not afraid to apply. I'm not afraid to get rejected again, to end up eventually getting that role at ESPN.
For sure.
So when you did graduate, so you had this internship, but it did not immediately turn into a full-time role for you. You graduated, you were working at Ann Taylor Loft, and you were just struggling to get into the space that you wanted to be. How did you deal with rejection at that time? And do you have advice for girls right now who are getting rejected a lot, which is obviously really common in this space?
Yeah, I think rejection is pretty inevitable. I know we kind of talked about that is just a building block for your success story. For me, I did the internship January to the end of April, and then I graduated that May, and I didn't start at ESPN until the end of September. So that's a pretty long stretch when you're kind of living at home with your parents' house, working in retail, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, seeing all your friends kind of get those full-time jobs and just kind of hoping that comes along. And there's so many times where you don't hear back from jobs that you apply for. And a lot of it's just a waiting game. And I did fly up to Bristol for an interview in April and for a full-time job and kind of got told this isn't for you. So I was rejected from that full-time role and kind of had a moment of, oh, am I ever going to work at ESPN full-time? Like, is this going to happen for me? Because there's a lot of different ways to kind of get into different companies. And I really just wanted to be on the social team full time. So I just kept applying for whatever social media jobs came up for NBA teams, NFL teams. And it is really competitive. There's not that many jobs when you kind of look at the different teams, leagues, and there's a lot of people who apply for them. So for me, I just kept applying, kind of hoping. Most of the time I didn't hear back. And eventually in September, I got a call that was like, hey, we have this 10-month project role. We know it's not 100% what you would be looking for, but do you want it? And I was like, I don't care. Yes, I'll take it. I want to, start my career here and figure out how I can, climb the corporate ladder. And so they were like, great, can you be here next week? And at the time I was in Kentucky and I just packed my little car and drove up.
Oh my gosh.
Without an apartment, and it was just like, I'll figure it out. So that was a 10-month project job that was split between production and social media. So my job was to basically curate tweets and put them on TV through a graphics engine in a control room, which was not at all what I thought my job would look like. But those skills that I learned in that production role and understanding the whole production side of the company at this point has been so valuable to make those connections in the college football space. I oversee all of our college sports content. So it was really crucial, I think, in that moment to learn those hard skills and understand where all those people are coming from and what their jobs entail. So I kind of built it from there. I had the 10-month project job and worked a lot of hours and slept on an air mattress with a little lamp on a cardboard box for a long time in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. And just grinded it out. I volunteered for everything that came up, whether it was baseball, college football, whatever. I'd be like, I'll do it, whatever the assignment is. Just please let me help. So they could see from that point that I really wanted to be here and I was going to be the best worker they had. So I ended up with another 12-month project job for college football, full-time on the social team, and eventually have worked my way up. I've been promoted 5 times in almost 8 years. And
yeah, I was going to ask you about that next. You didn't just stay at one role the entire 8 years at ESPN. You pretty much got promoted almost every year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So now I'm our team's only senior social media manager.
That is absolutely incredible. And to hear how you started to it. I love the stories where it didn't just fall in your lap. You worked incredibly hard to get where you are now. For you achieving all these yearly, pretty much yearly promotions, would you attribute it to like hard work and grinding, or were there anything else that you think that you did within ESPN to propel yourself forward?
I think so much of it, you got to think about how can you make your boss's life easier and what can you help them with that will, save their day to day. And I think I'm someone who always wants to be challenged and always wants to kind of find the next thing. So for me, I would volunteer for any kind of project. And ESPN just has a new partnership with PLL, and I don't know anything about lacrosse, but I'm going to figure it out. So now the PLL partnership is under me. An HL partnership is under me as well. And those are 2 sports. Being from Kentucky, no clue. But I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to research it and understand the sport in and out as much as I can. So now tomorrow I'm going to cover PLL games since they're in Charlotte this weekend. So I think the biggest thing for me is just never be afraid of a challenge, whether big or small, and kind of figure out how you can make your boss's life easier on a day-to-day basis. And they will appreciate that, and you'll learn a lot in the process.
How much of your work is field work, of actually going to sports games and filming content for social media?
It kind of just depends on the year. Last year, I traveled a lot for college game day. I've been to the NBA finals, went to, Kawhi's NBA finals in Toronto. I was at LeBron's last game in Cleveland during the NBA finals, went to Tom Brady on Monday Night Football. So I've really just gotten to do a lot of really cool field work where we build out Instagram stories and TikToks from on site. I think I've kind of hit the point where that's becoming a little less. But I have a couple cool opportunities coming up, like PLL. I think Bryce Young with the Panthers now. Hopefully there'll be a Monday Night Football game I can go to. And, Knoxville, Athens are really close. So we went to Knoxville twice for college game day and SEC Nation last year. And Athens is an easy drive from Charlotte. So really anything that's kind of close by, proximity wise to Charlotte, I have gone to.
Is there one moment in your career where you, like an aha moment where you were like, my job is just so freaking cool?
I think there's kind of 2. I loved covering the NBA finals, and I grew up in Lexington, so I never really had an NBA team. I would just follow Kentucky Stars through the league. So kind of seeing LeBron in person when he was with the Cavs at the time was incredible. I mean, he's just a phenomenal athlete. And I think too, a couple of years ago, all of our social media coverage was done by women on site for the college football national
Oh,
championship
wow.
in Indianapolis. And that was kind of a moment of like, yes, like, let's go, ladies. So I really loved being a part of that. And it kind of felt like a big full circle moment for me as well.
That's amazing. So your job is all focused on social media, primarily working with ESPN. When it comes to staying up to date with social media trends, is there anything that you do to keep up to date? Like, are you, on social media? Is there any resources that you follow, or kind of how are you able to stay on top of the trends?
Yeah, I mean, they change every day. Every day it's like, what's the algorithm going to look like? So it can be challenging to stay on top of, but I think to understand it, you have to be in it. You have to be a user, you have to be active. You can go through TikToks, pay attention to what you think is going to eventually be a viral trend and try to tap into that as much as possible. We launched the college game day TikTok a couple years ago, and within a year reached 1 million followers there. And that was kind of like a fake it till you make it for me moment, where I was like, I don't know anything about TikTok at this point in time, but YouTube is your friend. So I would go on YouTube and try to figure out, okay, how can I best edit this video? What other apps can I be downloading, using like CapCut, whatever the case may be, just to kind of fully dive in there and make it as successful as possible.
Yeah, I think TikTok was very interesting to see how all brands like found their niche within like what type of content performed best on that platform. Was there any time, we talked about rejection with applying to jobs, but has there been times when you've thought something would work really well, and like posted on social media, or like did a campaign and it just flopped, or it just like did not go like you thought it would?
Every day. I mean, we post on average 400 things a day. So there's always going to be something that doesn't hit, and that's okay. You know, at the end of the day, as long as you learn from it, that's kind of our motto, is just, you know, throw it at the wall, see what sticks, because any given day you might think something might not perform well and you try it and then it gets 1 million views and you are shocked. So I think like our team's really great at having, you know, a collaborative effort and being really encouraging of teammates, and say, you know, someone has an idea, that idea is going to be supported, or someone's going to toss out, what if you thought about it this way, or what if you tried to do it this way, or as a carousel instead of a reel. And everyone's super collaborative. I think that's one of the best parts of working at ESPN. Like, I genuinely love my teammates. People are really good friends with one another and are just like each other's biggest cheerleaders, which I really, really value.
When you started working there, was there imposter syndrome on posting on accounts that were just so large, right? Because it seemingly the stakes are so much higher than if you post for like a small company and it flops. Like, okay, there's only, you know, a couple thousand followers versus like ESPN reaches millions and millions of people. Was there any imposter syndrome when you started, and how did you overcome that?
There absolutely was. I think especially once we launched like ESPN TikTok, it was imposter syndrome all over again, being in such a new space. But I think the biggest thing, you just have to trust yourself and know that you are smart, you are capable, and you'll figure it out. And I think at the end of the day too, since we post such a high volume of content, literally 400 posts a day on average,
Yeah, that's insane.
you have so many opportunities to succeed and so many opportunities to fail in the same breath. So I think that, you know, social media just moves by so quickly that you don't have that much time to sit and dwell on a post from like a day before, because you got way more content to get out and focus on instead.
Was social media the space that you thought you would be in, or is this, because I know you mentioned at the beginning that you thought you wanted to go be a silent reporter, like, okay, no, that's not for me. And now you're here and you're in this social media role, and looking at your history, you've had you've been on the social team for a little while. So is this what you thought you would be doing?
I think that once I did my internship with coachcal.com, it was just like a light bulb went off for me. I mean, I wrote like a fourth grade career report about how I was going to work in sports and how I was going to work at ESPN or play for the Atlanta Falcons. And, you know, one of those is way more plausible than the other. So for me, it was just, you know, being dedicated to wanting to be at ESPN and figuring out what that would look like. But when I worked at coachcal.com, it was truly an aha light bulb, like this is it moment for me. And it just combined like the creative aspect, the journalistic aspect, which I really appreciate as a journalism major, and got to combine everything I like into one thing, which is kind of wild when I reflect on it a little bit, but it truly, I just think that you kind of end up where you're supposed to be in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's interesting hearing the journalism transition, because I'm not the first person I've talked to that has started in journalism and ended up in social media. And I love that you can be open and receptive to career journeys that you didn't think were originally for you. And I think it's really important to be open when you realize like, okay, this doesn't actually feel right for me, instead of just being like, I decided this when I was 10 years old and I'm gonna I'm going to die doing it, or I'm going to die trying. So I think being open and saying like, hey, this, what I originally thought was for me, maybe isn't exactly the right thing for me right now. And that you kind of were able to say, okay, actually this, I now with this new career path, you get to incorporate your love for sports, but you also get to do something that, excites you a bit more and doesn't have you in the rain on the sidelines.
Yes, that was not for me. On camera, that public speaking, I was like, nope, never mind.
I am loving talking to you about this because I really want to make this episode for just so many girls that I've talked to that really do want to work in sports marketing. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it is really, really hard to get into this industry. If let's say you were at Ann Taylor and you got a job, but it wasn't at ESPN, it was somewhere else doing something else, and you weren't able to get into ESPN, what would you be doing now to make yourself a better applicant to then make sure that your next job would then be at ESPN or another space in sports? I know we talked about doing some like video editing and photo editing, but I really want to give those girls something that maybe they can work on.
Yeah, I think the Savannah Bananas are like a perfect example of, it's this kind of independent baseball team who, I mean, they had social media, but it was kind of starting from scratch in a lot of ways. And now you see them, there's an ESPN Plus show about them, and you see their viral videos all the time. So I think so much of it is just making the best out of the situation that you're put into at that time. Because the person who does social media for them was just like, let me just throw this at the wall and hope something sticks and hope that, fans enjoy this funny, silly, kind of wild baseball content. So I think that it's totally possible to be in whatever social media position you're in or marketing position you're in and absolutely just make the most of it and make yourself stand out in that space.
Okay. So you're saying like, even if you're not in the sports industry, as long as what you are doing, you're making the most of it, you can then, apply those skills to then go into sports.
Absolutely.
Because I'm wondering, and you could let me know your take on this because I don't really know a whole lot about the industry. I am going to watch the game tonight. I do not know who's playing at the game. I just know I'm going with friends to watch it. So this is not my expertise. So that's why I'm always like, I wish I had something to help these girls with. But when I think a lot of the girls I talk to, they feel like because they love sports so much, they can get the job. And it takes more than just your love for something, right? Because I see it the same in beauty. I love skincare. I love beauty. I want to get a marketing job in beauty, right? Or I love fashion. I want to get a marketing job in fashion. And they think, and the passion is great. And having love for, this industry is awesome. But I think what you and I are getting to is that it takes more than just that passion for sports. But is there a way, like, I'm sure you have to know about the sports industry to be able to work in the sports industry. Are there, like, I don't know what it would be, but is there a way for them to like highlight their passion for sports in their resume or their portfolio? Or is it maybe not as important when applying to jobs?
I would say that it's not as important as I think people might think. When we look at resumes, we look at experience and we look at like a hard skill set for social media, just because of how prevalent it is at this point. You can find so many internships, volunteer kind of experiences in this space. So while sports is obviously important because it is ESPN, it's not end all be all. I think that we've hired people who have like political science degrees and have no sports experience at all because their hard skill set in social media is so strong, or their video editing is so strong. So I think when we look at resumes, it's not like you have to have 5 internships and all of them be in sports, or otherwise you're not going to get hired. We really value the people who fully understand the social media space to their core. So I would think that, it's great when people do know about sports, obviously, because that's something you're covering every day, and the passion is necessary because it is a grind. You're working nights, you're working weekends, you're covering a ton of sports events. But at the same time, we really look for people who are passionate about working in this space too and have that valued experience. So I would say it's kind of a balance between all of it, but it's not as important as I think people might put pressure on themselves to figure out.
Okay, yeah, I really love that you said that because I feel like that's what so many of them feel like is holding them back. But I think what you are giving them is something that is a lot more feasible too, is like go focus on building your hard skills, go focus on just getting experience. And then I always like to say, like, even if your first job isn't the one that you initially thought it would be, like always think 2 jobs from now. So okay, will this job give me the hard social media experience to then go and get my dream job working in sports, and I focusing on the hard skills like you said, I think is some good actionable advice for them to take away.
Exactly. And when I was in college, when I was working for our student newspaper, my dream job was not to write for a newspaper and be a beat reporter. But I knew that the hard skills that I would learn in terms of writing, covering sports directly, like the journalistic aspect of it, the news aspect of it, is all things that I apply to my everyday job. You know, we cover a ton of breaking news every single day and a lot of really tough, sensitive storylines. So I think that my time, you know, as a journalism major, my time with the paper, like all of those kind of fold into what I do every single day. So every experience that you have, you're going to learn something that's valuable that you can immediately apply to whatever you want to do next.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So one other, I want to bring it back to you a little bit, Annie. So I want to talk specifically about the differences in your roles at ESPN and kind of how you've grown personally. So you've had a lot. We can't go through all the different ones because you've had so many. But can you maybe compare, we'll start from like you just going on and being on the social team as like social media coordinator, to now having your senior role. And there were, you know, a good amount of roles in between, of what the difference looks like when you were on the social media coordinator team. Were you like on the ground field, like filming content, and like now are you managing content, or kind of what does your growth journey look like?
Yeah, so when I was at like a coordinator role, my biggest responsibility was posting day to day on the feeds, and it was curating content. So content discovery, looking through, you know, the top stories on ESPN.com, looking through any breaking news that might come down, and just creating content and churning it out as quick as possible. I mainly worked on college football during that time period only, so I would work, you know, long hours on Saturdays, watching every single college football game that's on TV, cutting the best moments and making sure that it got posted to our college football account. And now, like spinning it forward, in that time span, I was overseeing college football like gradually a little more and a little more. And so now in my position, I oversee all of our day-to-day content across all sports, but I do still directly oversee college sports. Now I have like 15 people under me who all work
Oh,
on college
wow.
sports. So now I'm very much a people manager, which I love, honestly. So now a lot of my day-to-day is looking at strategy, upcoming events. I still work a lot on breaking news just because it's so tried and true to like what ESPN is as a company. And you know, you see an alert from ESPN or you see a tweet from ESPN and you take that as like this is gospel, like this is facts. So we have to be, you know, really on top of everything we're doing for news. So I still work a lot on that, but under me, like we have NHL partnerships, PLL partnerships, ACC network, SEC network, college game day, college football, and just all of our different content and strategies. I oversee our daily content leads. So I have a bi-weekly meeting with them to go over, hey, how is everybody's workflow going? What are we looking at content wise? And kind of work with them. And there's about 30 DCLs, daily content leads, that I work with. So kind of oversee all of them. I have all of my direct reports. So like my little org has just really grown quite a bit. And I used to not manage anyone. So that's really been a fun growth opportunity for me.
I was gonna say, Annie, it's absolutely phenomenal how much you've accomplished in just under 8 years at ESPN. Like it is really, really inspiring to hear that yeah, that your hard work has just taken you so far. And I really hope this is very inspirational for the girls listening, because I think what you do is so awesome. Do you have any other advice that you would like to share with young women that are looking for marketing jobs, or maybe want to have a job like you someday?
I think the only other thing I would say is like you are so capable of reaching out to that person on LinkedIn and, you know, developing the hard skills that you need for the job. Like you have all of the tools that you need on, you know, whether it's YouTube, whether it's professors, any classes you can take, internships you can take advantage of. There's just so many opportunities out there, and everyone is very capable of having the job I have. It's wild sometimes for me to think about, but truly it's very attainable, and it's very realistic for everyone to kind of have a similar role.
Yes, but I don't want to discount all the hard work don't discount all the hard work you put in there, because I say the same thing. You know, I have my own business, and I would say like literally anybody could have their own business, but everyone would look at it and be like, no way I could possibly do that. But like, yeah, you could. But I think what really separates the people that do it and not, and I think specifically for your role, is how much hard work you put in to get there. And I think that is, and you look back now, it's been a long time, that seems like, you're distanced from it a little bit, but it is not like, it is attainable. You're absolutely right. And people are capable. You are absolutely right. But you also have to really want it and be willing to put in the work to get there, because it's not just going to fall into your lap one day. And you're not just going to like wake up and have this job and this title and this responsibility and all these cool perks working at ESPN. Like, it also, you have to put in the work there too.
For sure. Absolutely true.
Yeah. And I think this episode was awesome, because I think you also kind of hopefully directed people in the right way of where they can start putting their time and energy, and how they can think about entering this industry, because this is also a place where a lot of people want to work. I would say this and beauty are like the two top areas that girls will always tell me they want to work in.
We need more women in sports. So I'm here for it.
Awesome. Well, Annie, this was honestly so fun chatting and going through your journey and really just getting to learn more about the sports marketing industry. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your wonderful wisdom today with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.